Thanks for that great introduction. Thanks everyone for being here. Super excited to be here. Thanks to all the organizers for making this happen. Somewhere I got my clicker here. Decentralizing with QR codes. I kind of evolved the title a little bit, building a modern decentralized web app. I like to move a lot, so hopefully that doesn't bother anyone. Got a lot of movement on the stage. I love interacting with developers, tech, just people in general. So I know a lot of you have figured this out. We got this QR code in the corner. You can scan that QR code. It's going to be on the screen the whole time, and you can give me feedback live. I love it. Please try to crash my app. You're not going to be able to do it. Thank you so much. I love that. So that was a great introduction. That'll make the other QR code hard to scan. So the confetti, like it'll render kind of slow, but it's rendering in a separate thread, so our worker, so you can't actually crash the application, but the confetti will get really slow. So if you want to know more about me, you can check out this other QR code, but you can't actually scan that, but I'll send it to you later. I work at Nearform. We do a ton of stuff in open source and Node.js. I feel really lucky to work there. I do developer relations, and I teach at local university, but you already knew all that because of that amazing introduction. So just going to reset my timer so I know where I'm at. In the beginning, I live in France. I love it. Thank you so much. I should have like a way to clear that off the screen. Let me see if it works. I have a button for that. Good. It does work. I did this once at a conference, and like the Wi-Fi was really spotty, and so I was like sharing my connection from my telephone, and like it kept getting disconnected, and I knew when I was disconnected from the internet because there was no emojis, and every time I reconnected, just make this explosion. So I live in France. I'm American originally, so if you're expecting like a cool French accent, I'm sorry. And I live by the lake and the mountains. I don't live in Paris. I live near the Alps. And I have this hobby, and the hobby is drinking beer. So there's beaches. Sometimes I'm drinking beer at the beaches. Sometimes I'm drinking beer in the mountains. But more often than not, I'm drinking a cold beer at the bar that's across the street from where I live. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two. Often it's two. Sometimes I'm with a friend. Sometimes I'm with multiple friends. And sometimes it's a whiskey. And sometimes it's a beer and whiskey. Just making my notes a little bit bigger so I can see them. And on and on and on and on it goes until it's done. Everything's empty. I look something more like this at the end. Just moving on. But there's a problem. I'm at the bar, and the owner of the bar has become a friend because, well, I frequent there more often than I'd like to admit. And he's told me, like, I want to have a customer fidelity program that we can use to give people points, offer them some sort of benefit when they come and have a pint of beer at the bar. And he's kind of like a tech-minded person. He's got these touch screens with Raspberry Pis that people can use to look at the menu, and he has little promotions, so he's kind of tech-minded. I thought that was really cool. And he's like, I don't want to pay, a huge sum to a third party that's going to try to connect into my point of sale system. Like, I just want to make something cool that we could do together. And he also runs these competitions for Oktoberfest, which surprised me. Oktoberfest actually starts in September, end of September, starting really soon, I think in about a week. And it's 2.5 weeks long. And in the past, like you would write down, the competition was how many pints of beer can you drink? And he'd write down, how many pints of beer everybody drank. This person, Coco, they drank 78 liters of beer in 2019. I don't know Coco, and it's not me. Even though my first name is Cody, that's not me. Just want to make that really clear. They drink a lot of beer. So we're looking at different ideas. We could use, paper punch cards, right? Like, I'm old. I remember doing that when I'd go to get my hair cut, and they'd like put a hole punch in a card. I remember Subway stamps. I'm really old, so that might not say something to other people here. But those are some other ideas. Or you could buy a barcode scanner and have, you carry around your card with a barcode on it, and you scan it. But that's really expensive. It's got to tie into his point of sale system. So there's a lot of options, but none of them were really modern and fun for the customers. So in any case, you'd have to have some sort of database to store that. and get to know people, have people put in their name or their phone number. You could do marketing and all that type of stuff, but it's a lot of work to invest in that. And of course, as we all know, time is money, right? So we're looking for a better solution. There's got to be a better solution. There's got to be a better way. So we had this idea, what if we could use QR codes? This idea already exists, right? Like we've seen this before, fidelity programs with QR codes. In France, using QR codes on a big scale, a large scale, like this worked. I don't want to touch on any sensitive subjects, but during the pandemic in France, we all had to have these cards that proved that we were tested or we had a vaccine just to go to a restaurant. And so this is a technology that's proven on a big scale. You could walk around and show your vaccine pass, is what they called it, craziness, and they would scan that, and then you could go into that restaurant. So this technology is proven at a large scale, and it's super efficient, right? You don't have to sign in, you don't have to do a bunch of stuff. You just flash your QR code, and the person in front of you, they can scan it, and they don't have to have a special device. They can use their phone, they can install the app, they can use a tablet, whatever they want. And it's local, right? This is a communication happening between me and the person in front of me. We're not using some third-party system to communicate when we're standing right in front of each other. So I really love all these concepts. And if you're kind of privacy-minded, that's pretty cool too, because it is a local communication. You're communicating between two devices in a physical presence. So you own your data, right? You decide who gets to read that. You decide who gets to scan your QR code. And we're reducing our reliance on APIs. Like we all know, we all love APIs, cloud providers, all that. But if we start thinking Web3 and decentralization, what can we do to kind of get away from those centralized API providers? And it's a made-for-purpose communication, right? This is something really local, made for purpose, just for what we're doing today. We're not relying on some bigger system and piggybacking on a bigger system to make this communication call. So these are all the things that we thought would be really cool if we could use QR codes for his fidelity program. So before I go any further, I should stop and do a demo so it's really clear in everybody's head what I'm talking about. So I'm going to just show if I can get my mouse over there. I saw it. Bring the mouse down. All right, this will work. Patience. Oh, it's going to be hard with all the, I should just hit escape and that'll go back down. There we go. Love all the confetti. Thank you so much for all that. So, yeah, a little different. So, warning, I'm a developer. I'm not a designer, so that's probably pretty obvious. I actually have another running in a simulator, which of course I did not put on that window, but that'll be fast. So here's the iOS simulator. I wanted to prove to you that this does actually run on a phone. And this is your home screen. This is where you'd show your QR code. And I'm logged in. I'm actually logged in 2 different ways here. But on the left, I'm logged in with my email address. Feel free to send me an email. And I have 21 points. So maybe I've drinking 21 beers, or maybe I haven't worked out the details of what a point actually matters. Now, one of the constraints here is in the simulator, iOS simulator, the browser doesn't have access to the camera. So I'm going to click on scan, but so I'm also an admin. Sorry, I left that detail out. So I would be also a barman, and or the bartender, and I could scan somebody's QR code if I click on the scan button. Warning, the camera's not going to work, so you're going to see some garbly-gook on there. That's just because the camera doesn't work in the iOS simulator. But fortunately, as you can see on the other screen, I'm also running this in the browser, and we can scan from here. If everything works as it should, you're going to see my lovely face on there. So just to prove that this works, I'm going to also scan on my phone. Uh-oh, I got signed out of the Wi-Fi. I'm back. Demo effect. Let's see what we can do here. Sorry for the pause here. I was completely signed in. This was all set up, I promise. But here we go. We're back. So now I'm going to scan my phone by hopefully putting it in front of the screen here. There we go. I just gave myself a point. So I now have 59 points. Wait for that to refresh. Here we go. Camera's back on here. I'm going to scan it again. Now I have 60 points. So I'm proving you that actually works. So I just wanted to give you a real quick idea of what I'm talking about. And now we're going to move on a little bit more with the slides. If I can click here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I love this. Like, do not stop. Do not stop. I will clear the screen a little bit because I do want people to actually be able to see the slides a tiny bit. So decentralized. Why is this decentralized, and why is decentralized a good idea? Well, I know I'm going to be a little bit tight on time today. This talk was originally like 25 minutes, so I need to speed up a little bit. I'll go a little bit quick through these slides, but a really short history of decentralization. I think storage is a great way to be thinking about decentralization, and it's a great example, a great metaphor for decentralization in tech. So storage, I'm thinking of this little chipmunk or squirrel storing stuff in his cheeks. And I'm not thinking about this type of storage. I'm thinking about this type of storage in some sort of data center or computer storage going back in time. So a little bit about history of storage. This guy, he's really proud of his possibly first hard drive. I think technically the platters were soft, so is it really a hard drive? And this stored 5 megabytes of RAM in 1954, 5 megabytes of storage in 1954. And slowly but surely, things improved. Advanced 25 years, and we got 250 megabytes of storage. And it's still not really portable, right? This is still like a mainframe thing. So that's kind of the thing I wanted to point out, is that this type of storage back in the 50s, almost up to the 80s, was all centralized, right? This would be in a mainframe in the basement of a big building where there's air conditioning, a climate-controlled environment. And so terminals would access that storage. So it was centralized storage. And then slowly with time, hard drives got smaller and smaller. I'm old enough to remember most of these, not the two biggest ones, fortunately. And then portable storage happened, and it got smaller and smaller. I'm also old enough to remember having boxes of floppies, and I'd go into my friend's house and copying them, and they would have a copy of that software. And this is really cool because now we're like distributing things, right? It's almost like an old-fashioned peer-to-peer network. You could take these and copy them, and you could distribute them manually. It's no longer centralized in one place. And that got more and more the case as we get down to like flash storage and USB drives, and on. It gets smaller and smaller. But now things are decentralized because I'm taking that physically and bringing it to somebody, and we're copying that data. We're using the internet at some point. But this is like a cyclic evolution, right? We went from centralized mainframes to decentralized storage with portable stuff. And now we're back to centralized, right? We all have cloud storage accounts, maybe not everyone, but most of us, if we're using a phone. And then there's things happening now like IPFS. If you don't know about IPFS, go check that out. It's like a Web3-based distributed storage, peer-to-peer. Really cool technology. I have a whole talk about that. We could talk more about that afterwards if anyone wants to. And the point of this slide is like, this is cycles, right? The pendulum is swinging back and forth. I had to throw this slide up there too to kind of model centralized versus decentralized. Nothing crazy there. But we can also think about that around APIs and cloud platforms. Like these are centralized things. So if we think about QR codes, we're now, this pendulum swinging back the other way to something a little bit more decentralized. And for this application, it's web first. I'm gonna try to speed up a little bit. I think I got a late start. I won't keep you here too late, but I'm gonna keep going. Web first. Web is a platform. This is something I love. This is something I love because I shouldn't get ahead of myself. I'll go step by step. I'll go through these a little bit fast. Using the web as a platform, using the browser, modern web APIs have come so far, right? We have web workers, which is giving us something kind of like threads that run off of the main, separate from the main UI thread. We have service workers, so this proxy layer between the network layer and the application, so we can cache things and we can run updates, have updates happen when we want them to happen, have our application check if there's updated resources, and we can update when we want. And we can also do offline access, and we have service workers, which is really cool. And now there's web APIs to access the camera, vibrations. Popovers is coming really soon. I think it's already in Chrome. It should be in the other browsers soon. And maybe actually last week when they released a new version of iOS, it's now in Safari too. So, so much cool stuff is happening in the browser and in modern web APIs. And of course, internationalization, I'm using I18 Next, React, awesome library, go check it out. I'll go really quick through these. CSS, love-hate relationship for me, of course. But in 2023, it's not that bad, right? It's getting better. We have really cool things to give us responsive design, and the grid and flex, those are built into CSS we no longer need to use the grid from things like Bootstrap. I'm using Uno CSS. If you're not using it, go check it out. Really sweet library. It's kind of like Tailwind on steroids and more flexible. Plugins, love this library. But today, in 2023, like the browser as a platform is such a cool thing. And you know, what I remember, if you go and check out videos of me on YouTube, you're going to see I'm a big fan of React Native. I've done a lot of React Native work. I'm always promoting React Native. But you know, the promise of React Native is like build once, write once, deploy anywhere. And the promise that we get, or the thing that's realized with the browser and using the browser as a platform, is this write once, deploy once. Like you don't need to have different deployment pipelines and have your software signed by the different app stores like you would with a native app with React Native. And of course we could package our web app, our PWA, into like a view and have it run natively. That'd be really ugly, but it is possible to say if you want to start with a PWA web first, you can always evolve later. Accessibility, there's some amazing talks at this conference about accessibility, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we got to think that from the beginning and build this in from the start. It's on the web, it's actually mature, right? Like this come a long ways from where it was before in the last 5, 10 years. It's come so far. And we should bake that in from the start. And you know, there's this fallacy thinking, oh, if I have to modify my design so it's accessible, it's not as cool looking. That's just a fallacy, because once you make your design accessible, you're bringing in more users, you're increasing your user base. So you're really improving it for everybody, because more people are going to use it and you're going to be able to invest more resources in your application. I did a hackathon for Finos, which is the financial open source foundation. FinOps, financial open source. Really cool organization, and they did this hackathon around the accessibility theme builder. It was sponsored by Discover. Go check this out. It's really cool because it lets you start building accessibility in from the beginning and because it is a design system, it's going to try to bridge this gap between designers and devs. Really recommend that project. Just throwing out some things that I really appreciate. I haven't actually used that in my application yet, but it's coming. It's coming very soon. React, we're all here at a JavaScript conference, so probably don't need to spend a lot of time talking about React, but devs know it, and you can hire people, you can scale up your team today with React. So that's one of the things I love about it. It's mature and stable, right? We all had some surprises at different times. Version 16, like our hooks got called twice, but there's also some great talks about that here at this conference. We love hooks, so now we can use functions. We don't have to use classes because we don't like classes in JavaScript. It has a great community and ecosystem, right? Like that's the thing I love about React. Like if you have a problem, I'm sure somebody else has already had that problem and somebody else has already found the solution. So that's what's great about React. So I'm using two interesting libraries here. React QR code is what's generating those QR codes. Same with the one that you have on the screen here. So it generates an SVG from the data that you want to put in that QR code. I just have a URL in there. And QR codes have different levels of error correction, and they have different levels of how much data you can store in them. And what's really cool about this library is it'll look at the size of your data, the size of that string, in my case, because it's a URL, and it'll choose like the maximum amount of error correction and the largest render you can have of the data, which means like you can cover up parts of this QR code and it'll still work, which is really cool. And it'll choose the best balance possible. And React QR Reader, this is kind of a tough thing because the web API for scanning barcodes in the browser, like it's coming. It's in beta. They're trying to standardize it. So this is a library that lets you do it in React. It does have some bugs, and it isn't like actively maintained. So asterisks around this one. I hope to change that with a modern web API soon. Okay, probably running low on time. So let's go a little bit faster. I already talked about using PWA, Progressive Web App. That's what I'm using here for this application. And I said that's going to give you that promise of write once, deploy once, which is really awesome. If you're not using Vite, you should be. And go check out the Vite PWA plugin, which will generate all the things you need, your manifests, and all the pieces that you need to make your React application PWA compatible. That's going to be awesome. Moving on real fast because I'm about out of time. Lighthouse, I'm not going to talk about this, but I'm really proud that I have pretty good scores I got some work to do on accessibility. And SEO, that was tough because this is a client-side application. So I do have like one cloud function that'll render some pre-render things for SEO. So moving on because we are just about out of time. Open source. I got to talk a little bit about open source. I got my shirt on today. Open source is art from Nearform, other arm from Nearform. Love open source. And I really wanted to take some time, I know I don't have it, to tell you that open source is valuable. And this will bring value back to your organization. You can, and you just have to frame it in a way that you can convince the higher ups that this is possible, right? Around the people, the brand, and the community. Some of the things that I love about open source when I'm making these arguments to people is you're going to be able to attract and retain talent. You're going to lower your maintenance costs. Commercial software, you don't know it, but accounting knows it. Like that costs between 15 and 20% per year in maintenance costs for commercial software. What if you took that money and invested in open source or invested in your employees contributing back to open source? So open source can be better and it can be cheaper than commercial software. And if you're going to have amazing open source project with a real community, so you have an external developer experience, your devs internally are going to benefit from that too, right? Because you're not going to put it off to the last minute. So I'm going really fast through these. It'll help build brand recognition, keep the marketing folks happy. And here's an example of where the executives can walk the walk around corporate goals and values, right? Sustainability and community. Well, here's a great place where they can actually do it, right? And have a real impact. I have a whole talk about building value with open source. Hit me up, we could talk about that, love to. Got my shirt on today, the same one I have there. So technology is a pendulum. Getting to the conclusion now. Centralized versus decentralized. We're posting to servers versus having a single page application. There's benefits both ways. REST APIs versus GraphQL, right? There's all these pendulums that are happening in tech all the time. And we have these complex interactions versus something made for purpose, which is what I've demoed here. And of course, privacy versus ease of use. All these things we have to consider when we're building an application. So what's next in my application? Go super fast through this. Basically, I need to have a designer because it's kind of ugly. And there's other things we have in mind to connect to social media. So just moving on. So what about you? Is there something in your organization that should be made open source? Something you could improve? Or is there already a project that you can improve? Let's make an open source solution for that, right? And come and see me if you have any questions about this application I demoed for you today, or if you want to talk about open source, or anything else around tech, if you want to talk about working at Nearform, come talk to me about that. We have like NPM packages that we maintain, like over 1 billion downloads, which is like 8% of the globally, right? And I work with 3 people that are paid to contribute to Node.js Core. Amazing place to work. We have a ton of experts. We basically do services, professional services. So either come talk to me if you're interested in working at Nearform, 100% remote, or if you need help with a project, we do consulting work too. So lots of fun stuff there. Have to throw a shout out. I'm going to be at NodeConf EU 2023 in a castle in Ireland, Kilkenny, at the Lyrath Estate, coming up in November. Write down this address or come see me. Love to talk about that some more. It's going to be an amazing conference. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have a ton of links. I will make sure that you can't copy these directly if you take a photo, but I'll make sure that these slides are available in public if anyone wants to know about any of the technologies that I used. That's another QR code about me. Hit me up on Twitter, X, LinkedIn. Let's talk. We don't do questions here today. Come see me. I'll be at the conference until the afternoon. I have to catch a flight. But come and talk to me or add me on any of the socials. I'd love to talk to you more about any of these topics I talked about today, or about slider.app, which is what I'm using with the emojis. This is public, this is live. It's still kind of in beta, but slider with no E, slidr.app. And you can add your slides onto here and use this application. Lots of cool things are coming in Slider. So love to talk about that a little bit more. Okay, I'm done. Going fast, trying. Thanks, everybody.